In this episode, you'll discover how ignoring the fundamental pillars of life for short term desires keeps you stuck in endless tunnel vision. Welcome to Energy Alignment for Entrepreneurs, the podcast helping entrepreneurs be free from anxiety, stress, and tension through balancing emotions in consciousness expansion. 3 things you'll learn today. Number 1, how the identity creates a narrow focus on desires. Number 2, why ignoring structures like temperature and speed prevents true alignment. Number 3, the difference between seeing desires and seeing principles. When we look at ignoring the fundamental pillars of life, it's a trade-off, right? You get short-term pleasure for your energy, but that comes with a reaction, if you will, right? Inputs, outputs, and math. 1 plus 1 equals 2. So you start to re-engineer because you see, is that trade-off worth it? And you kind of intuitively know the answer, but you may have to also analyze the relationship between how you use your consciousness, right? Cheap dopamine will fry your nervous system. A fried nervous system cannot connect to real intelligence nor genius. People like Einstein, Nobel Prize winners, intelligent human beings understand the subtle relationships of consciousness. And you yourself, everyone can be intelligent. Everyone has the intelligence within. It's just really that bigger question of, are we ignoring the fundamental pillars? What are the trade-offs that we're making in life? And when we look at the identity and its relationship to focus, then you sort of have this space to notice when I am thinking in relationship to myself in an obsessive or selfish or greedy manner, then I have this focus which is so much like tunnel vision. In the tunnel, you cannot see anything except for what is right directly straight in front of you. And of course, a little into the distance. Now, that focus, that tunnel vision, is useful in life. When you are in the moment doing something rigorous or mechanical or technical, where there are step-by-step procedures, etc. Right? Like when a pilot goes to liftoff, I'm pretty sure that they have a checklist. They have to go through a few things. Even though they're a pilot, they know what they're doing. You need to have a focus and a tunnel vision in life, but the big caveat is too much of that cuts you off from your spirit. So when you look at the identity in that relationship between a narrow focus on desires, you have to kind of work what matters to you. And then you begin to make the nuance or the change from operating within desire to operating within necessity. And you actually make your life much more beautiful, joyous, wealthy when you align yourself with necessity. Because that is how you are the best human you can possibly be. When you know what matters, in every moment of your life, you're living in alignment with what truly matters most. And a lot of work has to be done, a lot of pain may have to be felt to rework your worldview and your relationship to conducting consciousness to see that you could make trade-offs. You could choose a short-term pleasure over living a true life. You definitely could. But if you are at all aware or can at all reflect upon your life so far, you'll be able to see that you make choices and your choices compound. And I'm not saying you need to be perfect, nor am I saying you should feel guilty for things that you are still working through. That's not at all the point. The big point is that there are so many choices to make, and there comes a moment where you start to simplify your foundation, where you see, all right, I'm going to list off some of my foundation for you, which would be fresh air, giving attention to the animals, primarily the dog, but still watching nature. So there's a link there: nature, animals. And then you have fundamental nutrition and exercise. Again, walking, it's holistic. So nature bridges into the next points. But walking, great exercise. Or jujitsu. Insert a intense sport of your choosing. And then weightlifting. You don't need to be a power lifter. I actually prefer lighter weights for longevity, but still having muscle gain, still being strong. Besides that, I would say you, depending on where you're at in your life, you have a project. So that could be a artistic project, not profit. It could be a business project. You could have both of those different projects, but you need to have a project. So it comes really down to your, and then also I would say where you place your attention. So not too much useless screen time. Um, like for me, I'm very aware of my phone screen time, but when it comes to PC, I also am aware of the screen time, but it's work time. It's focused, it's dialed in, it is flow time. Um, Ultimately, the recap would be exercise, nutrition, sleep, also add stretching, maybe add meditation, then intense sport, jujitsu for me, weightlifting, then fresh air, nature, walking, and of course, your career. I didn't mention that, but you do need a career. And then you should have a project as well. Inevitably, your project may become your career, but there's usually a trade off time. And that's kind of where I'm at right now, where my business isn't fully self sustaining at this moment, but I can very much, I'm building it in a way that it will be self sustaining. And therefore, that will be my full time career. So if you decipher your life, look at where you are, you may not be able to use everything I just said there because it's very practical, it's related to me. But if you take the pillars, everyone, exercise, sleep, stretching, meditation, right? Weightlifting, everyone can do that stuff. Same thing for the career and the project. Won't be the exact same as me, but all of this is extremely relevant to you. So, then point number 2, why ignoring structures like temperature and speed prevents true alignment? Well, this is the subtlety of understanding the unseen. There are things in life that you can communicate temperature and speed, but there are ways that consciousness works that language struggles to fully put into words. And also, that's the beauty of life as well. There's so many different form essences, vibrations, and personalities, behaviors, tones of voices, ways of moving, styles. Each spirit does have a little bit of flair, right? Even though the world is united. So when you are looking at the big picture of true alignment, you need to understand like, hey, there are times to go fast, but if you go too fast without a clear path, then that's not right. So you see, okay, in order to have speed, I need clarity. All right. So then clarity precedes speed, right? And this simplifies the consciousness conducting. When you see what precedes and you can start to see the implications of things, where you don't need like the full conclusion, right? Because then you're a step ahead. And when you're a step ahead, whether it be in chess, jujitsu, in a race, whatever it is, I'm not talking about winning. I'm talking about just being free, being clear. And it helps to be a step ahead. One other thing I would add that I still work on, right? My girlfriend, she taught me something, and that would be how to sleep in. I never slept in. And I still can't sleep past like 6, but still. There's a huge difference for me between waking up at 4 and 6 a.m. So play with that. The reason I bring it up is because that is in relationship to speed. The funny thing about waking up earlier is I used to wake up earlier so I could be speedy off the bat. I still did meditate, but now I'm really learning like, hey, I like to go slow until I have full clarity, right? Until all the pistons, until the entire motor is churning and just feeling right. I'll go slow. So there's that awareness of, all right, what's my temperature? What's my relationship to my clarity? Because then I can ramp up the speed once the temperature's right in the motor and it's ready to go, right? And I have the clarity. So it's important to kind of speak metaphorically, see your life metaphorically, because not everything needs to be. There's some things are so infinitely complicated. There's so many variables involved that language, like it would have to be an essay. And you don't need an essay every morning. Sometimes you just need intuitive understanding, right? What's the definition of intuition? The comprehension of millions of bits of information simultaneously. Your logic is intelligent and smart and so helpful, but your intuition can do things that your logical mind can't. So, point number 3, the difference between seeing desires and seeing principles. Yeah, and we kind of were stepping into this without putting the language on it. But when you see desires, you're living in a world of tunnel vision, which is short term. When you see principles, you start to zoom out and notice the essence of time and compounding. And it's not as if you're taking yourself out of the moment when you see principles, but it is the simplification of the essay, which I was previously mentioning about a minute ago or 2 minutes ago. That intuition, the principles help to simplify in logic what the complexity of the intuition is actually doing. That's why I love metaphors and principles. Because to actually use logic, language to communicate the nature of what intuition does, what consciousness does, without your logical mind, right? Like you can want to pick up the pen, but what all the things that are actually happening to go and pick up that pen, you can start to tap into that. And you can be aware on a subtler level of the nature of how you actually work. And that gives you that boost in life. It allows you to be free, to be confident, powerful, to align yourself with the nature of creation itself. And that doesn't make you special. It's actually the unspecialness of you that allows for you to be special. It's the paradox of life. The game is tricky, but you see, like, okay, when I go after, here's the quote on my wall: I want never gets. What we are saying there is if you've ever been around people, a group of people, and you're some needy little, I want this, I want that. Sure, some people may people please you. They may give you what you want. But you're going to see that life doesn't work like that. You have to go and align yourself and be someone who's worth getting and receiving what you actually need. The little kid who just screams, I want this and I want that, you don't get when you want. So you have to bring yourself to a new place of operation where you're no longer just saying, I want, but rather, what do I need to do to position myself to receive that, right? So it may be like, oh, it's just wordplay. He's just speaking. No, because when you realize you're emanating unseen frequencies every moment, that this world is infinitely more complex than you may have been taught and raised to see. You notice like there is so much intelligence moving through yourself, through others, through this world, for everything to be the way it is. So much has had to happen. Humanity isn't a coincidence, and you're not an accident. And ultimately, when you start to see the bigger picture, those desires, they don't grip you like they used to because your worldview changes. in the principles of life, right? The deeper rules. You could call them universal laws. You could say the things that are just common sense, but then, of course, you have that new saying, common sense may not be so common. So, right, we have to be specific and precise. And I guess if I were to give you a few of my favorite principles, it would go somewhat like, and this is where the Bible comes in. Now, I'm not going to open up my relationship to the church right now. But ultimately, I know there is truth in the Bible. There are some things which may not be so of that essence. But, to treat thy neighbor as thyself, it's a brilliant principle. Why? Well, because it allows you to put yourself in other people's shoes. And what happens when you take the time to understand others? You're going to better understand yourself. And that's a compounding effect that allows you to be a true human, a real human being, someone who has compassion, someone who doesn't stop on insects, someone who isn't violent and competitive, but simply powerful and confident, someone who cares about the people that others may overlook, someone who sees the full unity in everything and everyone. And maybe no one will ever be perfect, but ultimately, this world can change, and the change starts inside your heart. And it has to start there. And another principle leading off of what I just said is children don't listen, they emulate. So if you're going to change your heart, a lot of adults are still children inside. You have to lead by example. And that's why your words matter, your thoughts matter. But we can't ignore the fundamental principles of life. And we have to see the trade offs we're making and realize, like, sure, for myself, it may not matter. But what if I am leading other people, you know? And you got to think about the other people, think about the future, think about the world, think about the influence that you may have. And it all starts there with, okay, treat thyself as thy neighbor, put yourself in other people's shoes, have compassion, live a strong life so that you actually have water overflowing from your cup. You can't share what you don't have. So you have to take care of yourself. And ultimately, it's like those nuances. They may seem small, but the small things are the big things, right? So those are a few principles that I absolutely love. They're powerful. Well, I'm going to skip the recap today because I went a little long. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate you. Now new episodes are out Monday and Thursday at 10 a.m. Eastern Time. And have a wonderful day. Share it with a friend.